The all-time leading international goal scorer, Christine Sinclair, is retiring from international football. So let's talk about it. Well, unfortunately, no player can play forever, and Christine Sinclair, the person who quite literally built Canadian soccer, hangs up her boots on December 5th, 2023, as the nation and quite literally the entire football community says goodbye to a pioneer and a legend of the sport. Even though everybody knew this time was going to come, and obviously every athlete, when they're hitting the late 30s, early 40s, retirement is knocking on the door, and given how the World Cup ended, right now is a very, very suitable time for Christine Sinclair to retire, and we're going to touch on that a little bit in terms of what that means for the team. But it really feels like a sad time to say goodbye to Christine Sinclair from the international stage. Over 320 international caps, she is the second most capped female player. You're talking over 300 international appearances. Like, that's a number that not many athletes can reach. Over 300 starts, 190 goals of the time of the recording. This is before she plays her final game, so I'm assuming she's going to get one final one in, so 191 could be the tally that you're watching. She's been named Canada's Player of the Year an astonishing 14 times. That is 14 different years that Christine Sinclair was named Canada Player of the Year, and I think it's a suitable place to start talking about her goals, given that she holds that title that doesn't look like will be stripped away from her anytime soon. Her goal tally started 23 years ago in 2000 against Norway, only 8 minutes into the game, where she was a 16-year-old Christine Sinclair. She was a rookie playing with many veterans. Most of them were like 10, 14 years older than her, which is such an iconic, beautiful storyline in some ways, that Christine Sinclair kind of known in the early 2000s to be this rookie star. She's an up-and-coming player from BC, Vancouver, Canada, and in the last 10 years, she is that veteran teaching her craft to those youngsters that are coming up under her wing. But 23 years ago, when she scored that first goal as a 16-year-old in the international senior stage, scoring was going to be her bread and butter. Before she even committed to that senior squad in 2002 in the Under-19 FIFA World Cup, that is known now as the U20 World Cup, but the 2002 U19 World Cup was hosted in Canada going in as the favorites. Christine Sinclair obviously included. She scored 10 different goals, 5 of which were against England, made it to the final. It was an all North American final between the US and Canada. Unfortunately, the rivalry kind of started from there with Sinclair, as the US were able to clinch the title. But from a very, very young age, you could tell that it was a star. Winning the MVP, the Golden Ball, the Golden Shoe in the youth stages, it was going to be something insane for Sinclair. Now, did they know that she was going to become the leading international goal scorer, score 190 different goals? Probably not. Also, to put that in a little bit of context, the player or the second player that's active in the game that could tally up to Sinclair is Cristiano Ronaldo with 128 goals. Now, to say that he's going to be getting something between 60 to 70 goals in the next few years is probably not going to happen. It's not just how many goals she scored, but it's the fashion that she scored so many of those goals. I mean, it was a devastating fashion. You're talking about 2012 Olympics. She went on a scoring spree to win that bronze medal. She scored that one terrific goal against Costa Rica that still makes highlight reels. That 2011 free kick against Germany, it had Canadians glued to the TV playing that replay button. The equalizer in the 2019 World Cup against the Netherlands tied her for having scored in 5 different World Cups. This is not to mention that she went on to play a 6th World Cup. She played the 2023 World Cup as a 6th World Cup, had a very, very close chance to become a player who scored in 6 different World Cups, but unfortunately was a missed penalty against Nigeria, as many of you might remember. And that 6th World Cup, we'll get to talk a little bit towards the end, it just did not end in a fair matter. She was an all-rounded striker. Her right foot, her preferred dominant foot, everything that it touched, it ended in the back of the net. Her left foot, the skills and the ball movement and the ball hold-up that she had, it terrified defenders. Her aerial awareness and her headers were so lethal and clinical. I mean, and talk about those passes, with how good and sharp her passes. I mean, she had a vision that not many players had, or not many players could detect. On the pitch, you were either very blessed to be her teammate because she was either going to assist you or finish your assist, or you were going to be a defender in opposition who absolutely hated playing against her because she just simply was so hard to read. In 2010, she won a championship with Marta, which might come as a bit of a surprise to many because we've seen them face each other, whether it was in the NWSL or on the big stage, Brazil versus Canada. But them two coming together in 2010 was such a beautiful start to what went on to become, obviously, the two legends that we know them as today. A few years before it, her and Megan Rapinoe also won the NCAA title with the University of Portland. And obviously, we know how that story went on to become their massive international rivals, especially given the context of the US versus Canada. But even Megan Rapinoe, who holds, I mean, I'm not going to sit down and talk about how huge Megan Rapinoe is, and she's a Ballon d'Or winner, and she's a FIFA Best Player recipient. But a few years ago, when Megan Rapinoe was asked who's the best player who's never won a Ballon d'Or, she answered Christine Sinclair. She played with Christine Sinclair, and she saw that magic. And outside of that North American lens, Christine Sinclair never got to play in Europe, and I don't think that's a necessarily bad thing given the era that she was playing in and the dominance that she had in the North American sphere. But not only did she not play in Europe, I think Canada Soccer was pretty poor in advertising and pushing and just commercializing Christine Sinclair to European fans. And during the time that she was obviously in her peak, you were talking about the likes of maybe early years of PSG, Wolfsburg, Lyon, Arsenal even. Like, those were the teams that maybe she could have played for. But I really don't think her not having a trip over to Europe hindered or took away a chance to make Christine Sinclair any bigger, because she was already massive. And I think the way that she spent her NWSL career in the last 10 years at Portland is really to be cherished. When the allocation came along, when the NWSL was happening and forming in 2013, she recalled ranking her top 3 teams, the teams that she wanted to play for. And the top 3 teams were Portland, Portland, Portland. She spent her university years at Portland, fell in love with the city, with the fans, with the culture of sports that they had, and she's become a Portland legend. You see when she plays at Providence Park, everybody is applauding her. Either she's coming off the bench or she's the captain walking onto the pitch with the 10 players behind her. Everybody is standing aloud, saying her name, clapping for her, and just in awe. And you could even see that in the players around her, her teammates. Like, put the fans aside a little bit, her teammates really do appreciate what Christine Sinclair brought on the pitch. Even Tobin Heath, who she played with 7 years, in multiple interviews has said that she was so honored, and one of the biggest honors of her career was playing with Christine Sinclair, because Christine Sinclair looked and made the game so easy when it wasn't. She made everything look so simple, even though it wasn't. But that was the magic of Christine Sinclair. When she first started playing football from a very, very young age, I mean, Canada didn't even make it into the inaugural World Cup in 1991. And that first World Cup that she made in 2003 was actually the first time that Canada made it out of the group stages. And she had scored 4 minutes into her World Cup debut. That is, from the early moments, what put Christine Sinclair as a name to change Canadian women's soccer. Yes, she never made it to a World Cup final. And yes, there were many short trips at a World Cup. But let's talk a little bit about the Olympics, a competition that the Canadians have notoriously been really great at. 2 bronze medals, a silver, and most recently, in the most recent edition, a gold. And that gold really encapsulated kind of everything together. It was Bev Priestman's first major competition with the team. And I don't think many people know this, but Priestman is actually younger than Christine Sinclair. And the way that them two have worked together, and the way that Christine Sinclair is ending her career under Bev Priestman, is a really, really neat story. I can put an entire video on this on kind of Bev Priestman and what she's done with the team and Christine Sinclair. But Bev Priestman, for some of you who don't know, before she took over the senior team, has worked with the youth squad. You're talking U17, U19, U20, every youth group. Bev Priestman has been very, very closely influential for. So when you look at the youngsters, or particularly the younger-ish group in the senior squad of Julia Grosso, Jessie Fleming, Heidema, Deanne Rose, like all of those youngsters that have become such an important set of players for the senior squad, they all worked with Bev Priestman in the youth stages. And when she took over that senior squad, she kind of felt that duty to involve these youngsters that she worked with. And I think she doesn't get enough praise for this or enough credit, but the way she's assimilated those youngsters into that senior team, and the way she's kind of given hope for that transition moment from now Christine Sinclair moving on to what would look like a new midfield moving forward. She's done brilliantly at that, but at the same time, she made Christine Sinclair like a second coach on the pitch. She gave her the hard moments. She obviously trusted her on the big stage. She understood the impact that Christine Sinclair had on the rest of the players, because the majority of the players playing around her at the Olympics wanted to win not just for them, but for Christine Sinclair. They were representing a little bit more than just Canada. They're playing more than just for themselves and their families. They're playing for Christine Sinclair. And the way that Bev Friesman has been able to gel all of that together and give Christine Sinclair the freest role possible, given the different dynamics of the squad, is honestly, you've got to applaud her for that. And again, I just want to remind you, in case you missed it, Bev Friesman is younger than Christine Sinclair, and I think it blows my mind that is the case. Like, your head coach is younger than you, but it's incredible what Bev has been able to bring to the squad and give Sinclair her biggest international achievement of the golden medal. Like that, I don't think people understand how revolutionary that was for Canada. All the soccer success that nation has had has come under Christine Sinclair's influence. And I'm telling you, it started from the youth U19 World Cup back in 2002. That first World Cup she played in 2003 got them out of the group stages. The few next Olympics rolled around, we've got medals into the country. Gold medal, that is the biggest achievement that this country has had from soccer. And when we talk about youth and kind of everybody being inspired in Canada from Christine Sinclair, it's not just the girls. Like, the men's team is a huge fan of Christine Sinclair because they also grew up watching her. They grew up watching her bring medals to the country. Christine Sinclair single-handedly put Canadian soccer on the map. She has touched every aspect of sports in North America. And it's much more than what she's done on the pitch. Often in interviews, you see her as a very quiet, shy person. And she admits that, yeah, I'm a shy person. I'm only very open to those very close to me. And it's funny, like, she's always joked about the teammates that come new into Portland Thorns. They don't even know if she lives in Portland because she's just so quiet about her personal life. But she's also known to be this like very quirky, witty, funny player who usually has very good one-liners. But she's a quiet person, and she's known to be such that in the media. But the way she's used her voice has changed the game for decades to come. When she started playing, the Canadian women's national team was earning $10 a day. Look how far we have come. And again, obviously not to disregard the context of the game growing and many different players affecting what they get paid now. But if you do not think Christine Sinclair was a leading voice behind every fight within this federation the past 20 years, then you've got some reading to do. She's consistently fought for equity, higher pay, improved standards, opportunities for youth. And go back to an interview from 10 years ago, you will see Christine Sinclair saying, I want to leave the game better than I found it. I want to make sure that youth have opportunities that I did not have. Behind the scene negotiations we might not know about. But the conversations and the fights that she's put together kind of secretly with the federation have glued the many, many cracks in the federation. Every time there was an announced funding cuts or the program was getting, smaller in terms of how many camps or the path or the amount of scouts, X, Y, and Z that would have affected the youth system, she was there fighting against it. So much so, and you're probably aware of this, but she took the federation and stood before a parliamentary committee rejecting the funds that Canada Soccer had proposed for the women's national team and the youth system. There's no reason that she should have had this fight across her 23 years of how long she's been playing for Canada. But she reached equity pay. It's a short deal that they were able to strike, but it's a deal that she leaves knowing that she put together. She started playing when players were getting paid $10 a day. She leaves with equity pay in the program. That's massive. It's brave and inspirational, honestly kind of badass of her. Like, she's so quiet and she doesn't brag about what she's done. She's not the type of player that you'll see talk about her. She's always talking about the brilliance around her, but she doesn't talk about her own brilliance. She's such a humble player. And again, opposition say this, her teammates say this, her head coaches say this, that she is really a selfless and humble person that is hardworking, works harder than anybody else. And if you don't believe that, then no player would have been able to play as long as she did for 40 years being at the top stage. Obviously, given the last few years have dipped understandably with age. She's had a relatively injury-free-ish career. She's touched so many lives that have played with her and against her. And I just don't think we will really get to understand her impact until she leaves. And there's been this kind of very silly narrative and conversation like, oh, she should have retired 4 or 5, 6 years ago. There's no reason she should have gone to the World Cup, her age, whatever. But I'm really glad that she didn't retire 5 or 6 years ago, because I would be really, really worried as to where the federation would be. Probably not in the position that it is today. The way that Canadian soccer has been able to flourish and continue to grow is because of Christine Sinclair. And if a lot of these funding cuts and a lot of the horrendous decisions that the federation has gone through in the past few years were able to go through, I would be really, really worried as to where Canadian soccer stands. She obviously plays one more year with Portland. We know this. If you haven't been able to catch a Christine Sinclair game either for Canada or Portland, then the next year is definitely your chance to. And this Summer World Cup is really hard to process. I think it was very unfair, obviously, for Sinclair to leave on the note that she did, but it was a wake-up call for the federation. It was a wake-up call for the system. In some ways, we were kind of seeing those huge effects, those domino effects, affect Christine Sinclair and how she was left off. Like, I think it was disrespectful that the federation has let her down this much. That is the ending that she got. Sinclair leaves a group that have learned how to win without her. Those 2 games against Jamaica for the Olympic qualifiers, she did not start those 2 games, and it was won by the youngsters in the team. It feels like the right moment to pass on that torch, and players like Jordan Huitema and Jessie Fleming and Julia Grosso have been very lucky to have the many years that they have playing with Sinclair and learning from her craft. Ashley Lawrence is also a huge Christine Sinclair fan. You know, she came out saying that Sinclair is my idol. I wanted to play for Canada because of Christine Sinclair. Janine Becky, it kind of really breaks my heart knowing that Janine Becky and Sinclair won't get to share the field one more time, but she also has been very spoken about how Sinclair changed the game for her. And she is a legend. She's not just a Canadian legend. She is a global trailblazer, and she's a pioneer of the sport. It's a very sad time. Like, I've only ever known Canadian soccer with Christine Sinclair. When she had her debut in 2000 and was scoring goals, like, that was a few years before I was born. I've only ever known Canadian soccer with Christine Sinclair, and she was the one with the captain armband, and every time you'd see her roster drop, her name would be the first there. So for me, I think my generation, again, those who came after she started playing the senior team, it's weird. It's going to be really, really weird. Like I mentioned, I'm recording this before her final game, but I feel like it would be sweet revenge for her to get her final goal, hopefully a win against Australia, the same team who knocked her out from her final World Cup in such a devastating fashion. Again, I think it's such a beautiful story now they're putting together against Australia. Hopefully, obviously, a win for the Canadians. There's no other way you want to see Christine Sinclair go out. And there's going to be some tears shed when she makes her way out. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to Vancouver because I've got final exams at school, which are preventing me from enjoying this very historical moment. So I'll be enjoying it behind the screen. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on Christine Sinclair and kind of what do you think this moment means? Obviously, I think it's a great transition moment. It's the right time for her to leave. And it's the time to pass on the torch for the youngsters. And I'm very excited for the many young talent that we have involved in the squad. So let me know your thoughts, opinions. Obviously, there's plenty to share about the leading international goal scorer of football. Please remember that if anybody's ever asking you about it, it's not Cristiano Ronaldo, it is indeed Christine Sinclair. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you later.